What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So, Draymond Green said something recently that seriously has me questioning even more than ever his so-called basketball knowledge. Because a lot of his fans like to they like to make it seem like Draymond is this basketball savant, and that that's the reason behind his success. And they try to downplay the fact that this guy plays with some of the greatest players in the game. Look. So, of course he said the other day that the 2017 Warriors would smash the 98 Bulls. Okay. Then he brings up the fact that, well, the Bulls only scored 80-some points in those finals. 80-some points. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Jazz averaged only 83 points a game in those finals. The Bulls, 88 points a game in those finals. And he said, well, there's no way that a team that's only scoring 80-something is going to beat us. And see, this is what is bothering me about Draymond Green. On the one hand, you talk about how you shouldn't compare eras because of so many different variables. But then you do it. Then you go and compare by putting a team that was constructed to play in that era against a team that's playing today. Of course, the Warriors would have an advantage. Of course. The 2017 Warriors, who were in their primes, by the way, and were like the model of what a championship team should be for that time period, is going up against a team that was the model but was aging for their era. And that roster was not constructed for a team to be competing in this era. So that's the one thing. Then you talk about the scoring, but you totally first of all, you're comparing an era where you could still be physical. Now, they had done away with hand checking, but you could still put your elbow in guys, in their backs. You could still be physical. You could knock guys off stride. This is why Michael Jordan often says that in today's basketball, he will either score a lot of points or he will foul out in 6 minutes because of the way the game is played. It was much more difficult to score, period, in the 90s. All these wide open looks these guys are getting from three, it would not have existed. The way the game was played, you couldn't do it. They would have ran those guys off the lines. All these easy drives that Curry and Clay and Wiggins and all these dudes get, they wouldn't have that. The spacing wasn't the same. It was a slower game. It was a slower paced game. Guys like Scottie and Michael and Ron Harper would pick up Steph Curry from beyond the half court. They would be slowed down. Oftentimes, you didn't take a shot until 2 or 3 seconds left in the shot clock. Do you know how many shot clock violations there were back then? Shit. I would say each side had at least 3 or 4 to 5 shot clock violations during the game. Shit, you go games without that shit now. How often do we see shot clock violations now? So what is he talking about? I think the Bulls took 14 three-point attempts a game by 98. 14. The Jazz only took 9 a game. They were the fewest in the league. The three-point shot was not the same thing as it is today. And Draymond, like I keep trying to tell people, Draymond would not be this force back then. Robin would out-rebound him. He's not going to fucking score. If he can't score in this era, if he can't score today, what the fuck makes you think he's going to be able to score back then? This guy misses point-blank layups. Airballs him sometime. This guy is pulling the biggest fraud in the history of the NBA. They wouldn't be running the offense through him because they won't let power forwards do that shit back then. He'd just be some big, undersized big, getting out-rebounded, out-muscled. He ain't stopping nobody. He ain't the most athletic dude. Yeah, you know, he's good at stopping generic motherfuckers, but stars be eating this nigga alive. If he can't stop a Pascal Siakam, what the hell do people think Shawn Kemp and all these other guys going to do against him? Come on, man. He wouldn't even be in the league back then. And he's talking about what the Warriors would do. I'm not going to get on here and say who would win with what. I'm not going to get on here and say that because sometimes that shit would get a little stupid. But I do know this. Draymond Green ass will not be in the league in the 90s, period. Not for long. That was the way they played basketball at that time. Okay? It was especially in the East Coast basketball, like I like to call it. But when you played certain teams like the Pacers, the Bulls, the Heat, the Knicks, it was a grind out style of basketball. Often going down to the last few seconds of the shot clock. And all these dudes that get these extra freebie points, all these role players that come off the bench and averaging 15, 16, nah, you wasn't going to have that back then. The only guys that could really score on a consistent basis are the dudes that create their own shots. It was, if you could create your own shot, then you could be a guy putting up 20-some points a game. That's why I always laugh when people say, if you put Steph Curry in that time period, he's averaging 35 a game. No, he's not. He's just a stupid idiot if you say some stupid shit like that. He'd be a force. He probably would average, I would give him 23 points a game, maybe 24. But no, he's not going to be averaging 30-some points a game. Clay might be averaging 16 points a game back then. It was a different type of fucking basketball. Period. And you're being stupid thinking that they're going to play like today back in the 90s when that wasn't how basketball was played. Can you think on anything more than an elementary level? And I'm really surprised that Draymond Green's saying this dumb shit. He knows about the rule changes. He knows how basketball has changed in the last 25 to 30 years. So for him to say that shit, man, it makes me lose even more respect for this stupid motherfucker.